Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to look at the weekly metagame breakdown for the Alchemy Best of One format. So someone mentioned in one of the chats the upcoming qualifier weekend in April is going to be Alchemy. So taking a look at what's being played here, the play-in will be best of one, qualifier itself will be best of three if that's the case. It's also the format I've been playing a bit. It's actually really fun. I've enjoyed it a lot more than standard recently. The diversity is a lot larger. And it feels like you can play a lot of different things in the format. I'm currently, I have like 3 decks I've been playing a lot with, peaked in like the 200 Mythic rank with some decks, and then I'm just camping right now, stopped around 500, just waiting for the ladder to reset so I can get my play-in points. But we'll take a look at a bunch of different decks, and we'll link them in the video description so you can copy-paste to your heart's content. So we're going to look Diamond Mythic rank. In terms of popularity of the day, we're getting this data from Untapped. If you want to use Untapped, link it for Untapped is in the video description, and we'll kind of go from there. So Grixis Heist makes about a quarter of the meta. Within here, this Heist also includes the Monument decks, which are quite powerful as well. It's more of a Grixis Chorus Monument style strategy, kind of playing in that regard. You have Selesnya Rabbits at 15%. There's quite a big upgrade package that you get in this format. And then Boros Burn, which is really the most package. There's no Monstrous Rage in this format, it's banned. But there's some powerful additional mice that get played in this format. So looking at Diamond Mythic rank, 12,000 games. So for all the people who say nobody plays Alchemy, it's basically on par with Explorer. It's seeing more play than Timeless. And so it's basically like third string kind of in there. If we look at like standard, it's a lot more, but it's a fun format. Like I always say, you play this as a game first and foremost, so kind of go from there. Some of these populations will be a little low, so the percentage might be a little high, but it's more to give you an idea of what to play. So Azorius Flyers comes in at the highest win rate. I will say I started with this list. So this is one of the decks I was playing a lot, kind of hovering around. You lose a little bit more to your deck than to anything else. It has some very strong draws, but there's not very consistent card advantage engines in this deck, so you do kind of just succumb to the top of your deck. So I'll show you the version I kind of adapted afterwards as well. So this deck here is built around a card called Awestruck Signet. So it has starting intensity. Whenever a creature with flying enters, if this card's still named the Signet, it increases its intensity by 1. And then when it has 3 or more intensity, it becomes a 5/4 flyer with vigilance. So very, very strong. Especially when you go this into Mockingbird, because Mockingbird copies it, but it has flying, so they see each other. So it's a quick way to get up in terms of the actual intensity. It's a very strong kind of way to push through. There's also the buff. So Wingbright Thief has been buffed to be a 2-mana 2/2, and this card's really strong. So it's kind of like a pseudo Thoughtseize, where you get information of opponent's hand, you get to choose a card in their hand, and then when they cast it, you gain 3 life and then draw a card. So this gives you some card advantage. This version here has got more interaction in terms of Dazzling Denial as a counterspell, No More Lies, Spell Pierce. I found the counters to be, like, sometimes they'd work, but you're still playing at sorcery speed for the most part. This version also doesn't have the Lord, like the Rabbit Lord, which was very strong. Also, this is one of the best cards in the format. Naktumen Shines Again, 3 mana. All creatures you own with mana 2, so CMC 2 or less, perpetually get 1/1. So they all get a boost. That's in your hand, in your library, in your graveyard. Basically, they all get a boost. Then it seeks a card and puts it into play. So it just pulls a creature from your deck into play. And then all your creatures get flying that are 2 CMC or less, which is very strong. 3 tree battalions, basically like a collected company, but you choose one of the creatures and then you create a offspring of the second one. So this plays really nicely with various kind of creature effects. Things like your Lord effects in the other build, you get 2 Wingbrights, 2 Signets, also pretty strong. Even Interrupter is very strong against the Heist decks because it taxes them. And it's also kind of a counter spell that's also a bird, kind of mixed in. And then the Imperium Thopterist, I've kind of waxed and waned on this. When it gets going, it's very strong because it provides an endless supply of Ornithopters. But on its own, it's a very weak play on turn 2. Doesn't block well, needs to survive a cycle, and kind of go from there. So the version I was playing, keep in mind, I've been playing a lot on iPad like just grinding up, so the stats aren't there, but very similar. But Valley Quest Caller is very strong in this deck. With 3 Tree Battalion, it gets you extra copies. That makes you have a Lord effect. It helps set up the top of your deck as well, and it helps you push out power. I went the full Nantuckum, very strong as well, to just boost up your team, kind of go from there, pull out some value. I went Healer's Hawk here. I wanted another 1-drop for Sheltered by Ghost on curve, as well as Dazzling Denial. It just helped me curve out better because this doesn't really block. Healer Hawk can at least gain some life. And then with the Nantuckums, it just makes your Healer Hawks better. So you just progressively get like a 3/3 or 4/4 lifelinker, which can help race the more aggressive decks in the format. But just kind of trimmed it down on that, made it a little bit more efficient. I think I went to 22 lands in this version. As the 24, I was finding I was flooding quite a bit in terms of the deck itself. From there, we go to the Grixis Monument. So it's called Grixis Heist, but so this is a deck I got to like top 250 Mythic with, and then just kind of got like weird variants out for a bit. Fell, but I was winning a lot with this deck. So the only difference I was playing with mine was instead of Perforator Croc, I was playing the Fibblethip case. The 2-mana case cycles, gives you some card draw. It's an early card if it like fills your library, gives you more card advantage off the top. But basically, you're playing the chorus package. So your Ribald Shanty, the Hymn to Ages, and the Mycelic Ballad all have starting intensity similar to the bird that we saw. But these, when you cast any of them, it makes all your other chorus, wherever they are, increase their intensity by 1. So this starts off with dealing 2 damage, then 3 damage, 4, 5. This draws you 1, 2, 3, 4. I've had times where I draw like 8 to 10 cards with this. This forces your each player to sack X creatures, and you gain X life. Again, very strong, kind of a pseudo board wipe. I ended up trimming on the number of ill-timed explosions in mine, just to kind of, they were situational. I've seen some versions that do play whatchamacallit, like the Deadly Cover-Up as just a way to kind of edict. Deadly Cover-Up's really strong in the mirror as well, because you just try to get rid of their Monument of Endurance. This deck basically only wins through Monument of Endurance, so that's the way you kind of get them. I was also, like, I trimmed down, I tried Burst Lightning in this, just a couple copies, helps with the early game, and then also late game is a way to trigger. What you're basically trying to do is with Artist Talent, you draw, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you discard a card and then draw. This would trigger Monument, so every turn cycle when you're just casting your spells, you're triggering Monument, getting that value. You have 3 steps ahead, which can copy the Monument, so you just get multiple copies there and kind of go to town, just answering your opponent's board as you go through. You're eventually going to draw close through to your deck. That's when you'll play Archival Whirl. So it's basically Time Twister, but if you give your opponent a Ristic Study, then only you shuffle your library and draw 7 cards. These then all get reset in terms of in your library, but you still have the intensity added to them, so they just progressively get better and better, adding more intensity to them. And then you have 2 copies, so you'll never deck out. You just keep shuffling your library in and then eventually pinging them with Monument. So these games do take quite a long time to play out, especially the mirror. The mirror is just gross. There's myself and another player that I kept running into them in events and stuff like that. And we kept playing each other. They were on this Prof version. I was on my Scholar version. Into the Flood Maw, incidentally, becomes one of the best cards in the mirror because you can bounce it. It also gives them a fish that you can then have a target for Ribald Shanty. So something to keep in mind there. But very strong deck, very fun to play if you like kind of these control-y style decks. We have Boros Burn, Boros Mice. So in this format, again, we have the Nantuckum in here. You have Heartfire Hero, which is notably a 0/1 to start off with. It got nerfed. Cheeky House Mouse, and then Flowerfoot Swordmaster. You have your Emberheart Manifold. Then you have Recruitment Instructor. So 2 mana, 1/1. Whenever 1 or more mice you control attacks, you draft a card from the spell book. So this is just a bunch of stuff that targets your creatures. Things for Valiant. There's Embercleave in here. So it's just kind of card advantage whenever you attack, which is very strong. And then whenever it becomes a target of a spell or ability, you get to create a mouse. So it both provides you things to target and then gives you a board to go wide. Valley Quest Caller works with your mice. This card just sees a lot of play in this format. You were going to see it for a couple different decks. Just the typing works out pretty well. Sheltered as removal, and then Lost Jite. Another way to kind of repeatedly target your stuff and get some value. Lastly, we have Valiant Emberkin, 3 mana, 1/1 haste. Whenever it enters or attacks, target creature you control perpetually gets 1+ power, so this triggers Valiant again. And then whenever creature you control becomes a target of a spell or ability, causes something to trigger, basically it triggers an additional time, which is very strong. So very, very linear, strong, powerful deck. No Monstrous Rage, so the trample effects usually come from the Manifold Mouse or the Recruitment Instructor. We have a couple different variants of Orzhov, and I'll share at the end the version of Orzhov that I'm camping in top 1200 with, and then it's kind of different than these ones here. So 75% on this one. So this is a raised pass deck that's actually pretty strong in this format. You have Chittering Skull Speaker, again, starting intensity. This just draws you a bunch of cards each time. You have the Sanctifier, Snarling Gorehound case to gain you life. This Split Skin Doll draws discards. So just a bunch of ways, gaining life, drawing discard, and then you're going to raise pass, bring it all back when everything dies, or you can sack it all to Bartholomew. So when you gain life, Starscape Cleric will drain your opponent out. So there's kind of like that version of the deck. Then there's a more bats-focused version. One of the strong cards in the deck is Golden Sidekick. So 2 mana. I think they nerfed it to a 2, or no, they either buffed it or nerfed it. It's a 2/1 or 2/3, if I'm not mistaken. In any case, Flying Lifelink, whenever you gain life, a random card in your hand perpetually gets XX, where X is the amount of life you gain. So it just scales and makes your subsequent cards better. Deep Cavern Bat is hand hate, Essence Channeler in here, Lunar Convocation makes you tokens and draws you cards. You have Sanguine Soothsayer, so 2 mana, 2/1 Flying Lifelink. When it attacks, you put a copy of Sanguine Bond into the top 15 cards of your library, but it costs 0 mana. Plays with a life gain theme, so it also draws a card when you cast it. So it's 0 mana Sanguine Bond that draws you a card. Obviously, you're getting a lot of life, so it drains them out that way. Darkstar Augur as a way to get some card advantage, Nantucket, Split Up as a sweeper, Zorlin rebuys you your cheap stuff, and then Roaming Throne to double up your triggers. We then have Cats. Yes, Cats is okay in this format. You have like reasonable effects. You have Bassery, like the cat life gain things, Glory Heart. I wouldn't say this is like tier 1, but you can definitely kind of skew in terms of winning games. The Innocents, Arabo, 3 Tree Battalions, like collected company for the deck. If you have the cards, I wouldn't necessarily go with it, but I've certainly run into it, and it can put up a formidable match in terms of just kind of pumping through creatures. So I'll leave this one here, but I wouldn't personally play this deck if it were doing the competition. We then have Grixis Heist. This one's a Demonic Pact sub-theme. I'll include this one if I find another version as well, but we have like the chorus cards, Ribald Shanty, Hymn to Ages, Mesellic. The big card here is Triumphant Getaway, which lets you heist twice, and then whenever you play a spell that you don't own, you drain 2, gain 2. For those unfamiliar with Heist, what it is basically, you look at randomly 3 non-land permanents in your opponent's deck, you exile 1 face down, and then you can cast it as though it's any color. So you steal their cards. This version's got the Demonic Pact Harmless Offering package to throw it to your opponent. Archival World reshuffles, and then this town with Storm Chasers or Nowhere to Run or Triumphant Getaway to kind of loop it as well. In terms of like the heist decks, there is, let's see if I can throw up the more traditional one, because you're going to get monument decks that kind of show up here. So this is like the more common version that you would see. So Grenzo got nerfed, so it's not really that good anymore. It's also 6 mana, but this is more common what you would see. So you have Weave the Nightmare that can allow you to either be a counterspell, removal, or heist effect. And if you control a non-land permanent that's not yours, you get to choose 2. Grave Expectation Heist, Lootmonger. I did get a nerf that the tokens come to play tapped, so you can't go infinite kind of chaining spells, but still very strong. Lots of ways to heist there, but this is kind of the other iteration of the deck that you might run into. Going on, we got Selesnya Rabbits. This deck can really push out power, go wide very quickly. So we don't have Knight Errant of Eos, but we have 2 Convoke cards in Amara, Voice of the Conclave. 3 mana, very easy to cheat out for free. And then its spellbook is basically you get to take a card that's all Convoke themed. So Knight Errant of Eos is there. The X spell, the Selesnya X spell that would make instant speed tokens. Allosaurus Shepherd is there, or the big dinosaur that convokes and gets bigger. There's a lot of strong cards there. Then you also have Buxton Decorated Host. So this actually got nerfed to be 6 mana. Everything else is the same, but you convoke it out. And then once it's convoked out at your end step, based on the number of tapped creatures you control, you get to seek a non-land permanent from your library, and it comes into play. So another strong way there. But you got your Rabbits theme, and again, Valley Quest colors stocks very high here. Hop to it with like the Valley Might colors is a strong curve kind of mixed into there. Your mana base, you could probably fix this up a little, either play another Captivating Crossroads or Restless Prairie. But that's kind of the deck there. Similar to the standard one, but with some upgrades in terms of the convoke threats. We then have Gruul midrange or kind of Gruul ramp. So this is a Smuggler Surprise, Calamity, Galloping, Inferno type deal. So this deck here, interesting enough, mostly green. You could probably fix the mana a little bit if you want, but Llanowar Elves, you have Fuel Tank Feaster, that both acts as a mana dork, but then in your hand reduces the cost of a card permanently. So the highest CMC gets its mana cost perpetually reduced by 1. So lowers the cost of these. You have Overload of the Hauntwoods here. That can help you ramp up. Railway Brawler. So when another creature enters, you put X1 counters on it, where X is its power. Some of these decks sometimes play Galta. So you could cheat into play a whole bunch of stuff. Terror Peaks, when the big things come in, you ping your opponent. Calamity makes copies of Terror very strong with like Smuggler Surprise. And then Archdruid Charm can be a way to ramp. Sharpshooter deals with artifacts, enchantments. Then there's the Azorius Artifact decks. It's kind of like a tempo-y oriented mid-range deck. It did catch me off guard, like Day of Judgment in these decks, because you see creatures starting off. But it has a card called Hangerback Assembler. So 2 mana starts your engines, and then you get a copy of Hangerback Walker in play. Once you've reached max speed, at the beginning of your end step, you put a 1/1 counter on each vehicle and artifact you control. So Hangerback Walker early, and then it provides you some utility there. Medicant could copy stuff. Landlord Navigator, when 2 artifacts come into play for the turn, you get to, at the end step, get a Thieving Magpie, which draws you cards. When it attacks, it creates tokens, map tokens. Thopterus, like we mentioned in the other deck. Hurliest Snares, removal with another way to put counters. So it's like your removal or your kind of artifacts have a utility and then have a subsequent utility in the deck, which plays nice. Memory Guardian, cheap threat. Bride's End is removal. You have support Skyforge. So 5 mana, 4/4 enters. You create 4 tokens. And then whenever the vehicle attacks, you draft a card from its spellbook. Just more vehicle kind of strategy. And then Voyage Home as some card advantage. And then lastly, like I said, I've been playing this solely on my iPad. You can ignore the sideboard. I've been playing it in best of 1. I've just been tuning a best of 3 list for best of 1. So there's a card called Midnight Percussionist, which is a 2 mana, and then it gives all your enchantments convoke. And then when you cast a enchantment, you create a copy of it to your hand. The card is strong, I think, in the mono white versions of the deck, where you're playing like 3 Blind Mice, you're playing the talent, like the white talent. In this deck here, I often didn't have anything to do with the mana, and most of my enchantments were black. So I went with kind of a blink value package. So it's kind of a pixie list. You have obviously your Hopeless Nightmare, Optimistic Scavenger, Pixie, but the whole point of the deck is to cast this card over and over, bounce it back, just perpetually make your cards very large. And then you have this card here, Mischievous Lookout. So once during each of your turns, you may cast a non-creature, non-aura card from your graveyard. If you do, it perpetually becomes a 2/1 rat in addition to its other types. So you can make this become a like the Nantucket become a creature from your graveyard, which plays nice. Blessed Healer as a way to be a lifelinker that scales with power, but also then lets you rebuy stuff from your graveyard. So it's all about kind of recycling your stuff, getting as many triggers as possible. Nowhere to run over the opponent sacrifices, the start your engine one. I found that a lot of games I wanted like targeted removal as opposed to giving them the choice, while the discard can play an effect and it's better into like the heist matchups, I did like the targeted removal, because if they play like 2 creatures, they just sack the worst one type thing. Dollmaker's really strong. Obviously the lines of like Overlord, and then you blink your Overlord, kind of like they're doing in Modern. Overlord fuels the graveyard and kind of goes. I've been hanging around top like 500 Mythic with this and just been camping and just waiting for the ladder to reset, and then I'll kind of run through the deck some more. In any case, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great one, and let me know what you've been playing with the format. Like I said, it's pretty fun. Catch you next time.